We can do it legally if you want it done.
Sounds like it's such a large commitment. It's the commitment.
2 months.
Really?
Yeah. Off and on. And then
Good.
back to school and test.
That's even better.
I mean,
I was trying to look for COVID.
I know, I could tell.
They gave me like 6.
Nope, takes 4 days. Nope, nope.
But, so would you, all
Um,
right, and of
No,
course you
no.
did not have it.
There's notes.
So
And so,
15 and
what do
they're
you think about getting them? I mean, would you be recommending that they get the?
golden
I wouldn't recommend either
ribbon
way.
cutting that are owned by Catherine said I
Yeah.
could.
Well, let me know what she decides.
Well, she's against it right now.
Yeah,
Did you ever find that?
I think I've met a few
I ordered 3 more from Amazon and
for the
refused them.
children.
Listen, I'm nothing if not.
Again, it goes back to.
I've
Thank
had
you.
it, I will.
I just want to get things done in transit.
Are you
We
down?
move things, right?
How are you?
Evidently.
Voluntary.
Usually it's people.
Donna, I just listened to your message about
Exactly.
25 minutes
There
ago.
you go.
So
Trust somebody.
If you can't,
Must be given to me.
you're in trouble.
Who do I talk to today and get that opinion, different opinion?
Right.
Chuck, you want this back?
I think that's you for the presentation.
No, I don't. If that's in order, I will.
Nobody ever sent a question about it.
Okay. Done?
No, okay, I just want to make sure.
What's the difference?
If you don't want it, then
Yeah. There's no clock. Oh. Where is it?
I am assuming.
Do you need this?
Right here. No. Where is, the clock is not there.
You know?
Yeah.
Why is this over here?
It's in where you set it.
Okay.
That one work? We put that one over there. We put that one over there.
You don't need to move the clock.
Does it just pull?
Never mind, Brian says it's fine.
The phone has the time.
I thought you always wanted
So I'm still.
We'll give it another minute or 2 and then we'll get started.
It's only so many.
These code problems. So honestly, having the code.
Oh, they're down
problems. They're out, they're in the closet. I can change.
I have a
I got one for Brady.
There's once.
Hey, Brandon. You put the keys in the pocket. Here it's okay. But other places, I had my coat. Somebody took my coat and they took theirs.
That's
So,
the
you know,
problem, exactly. And that's what normally I don't do that. But here, I think I'm safe. I had to have me once too. It was night. It was. Yeah,
Depends on if anybody here wants to wear one. It's like trying to talk.
true. Suburban, so even a little bigger.
Oh.
Yeah, even a little- My wife and kids spies, they won't drive. it.
Oh. Basic.
Which is fine.
Because they always your car.
Don't have to worry. Go for it.
Let's call today's Board of Trustees meeting to order at 4:03 PM. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Filkowski,
Present.
Epic.
Here.
Martin,
Here.
McNamee,
Here.
Nunley. Here. Sheets, Spence,
Here.
Swanson, Zibble.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. If we could please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mr. Zibble, would you be interested in reading the mission statement today?
Certainly. Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation services to all Lake County residents with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
Thank you very much. And are there any public comments in the room today? Yes.
Good afternoon. You hear me okay? Do I need?
I guess I was told to push this button. Am I live on this now?
You're good.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Frank Polifka. I live in Madison, Ohio. Some of you may know me, but I'm here to say how much I really appreciate, my whole family appreciates the gift that you bestowed upon us at the end of July of this year. The naming of the station is truly a tremendous honor. And I wanted to come here and thank you for bestowing that honor on me. And it's to me, I'm still kind of speechless over it, as I was the very first time I found about it, but it's very humbling. And thank you very much. And I would like to add one more thing. Folks are doing a great job, and you make me proud every day I see out on the street doing the fine work that you're doing. Continue on in your quest. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you very much for your remarks. There was honestly no one more deserving of the honor. So thank you again for coming out today. Are there any other comments in the room today? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees special meeting minutes of August 5th, 2021?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Spence. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Epic. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
We're going to have a correction to that. Mr. Dines advised, since Mr. Epic was not present for the special meeting, he cannot second the motion. So is there another second in the room?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Zibble. Vicky, I'm sorry, if you could please call the roll again.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. At this time, is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees Board meeting minutes of September 27th, 2021?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Zibble. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Nunley. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Abstain.
Zibble.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And at this time, I am going to turn the meeting over to Ken Reed from OTRIP for the SOAR Award.
Oh, yeah, real quick. So this is Ken Reed, as Brian mentioned, from the Ohio Transit Risk Pool. I asked him to come today to present and just kind of give some information. Laketran was awarded the SOAR Award by the Ohio Transit Risk Pool, and Ken Reed is the Director of Risk Management Services at the pool. And I thought it'd be good for you to hear directly from him what that actually means and just kind of give you a little bit of overview on it. So Ken is from Cincinnati, so I appreciate him driving up here to give us this presentation.
Middletown, actually, but I'm the one employee of the pool that isn't in Wadsworth. So in the Wadsworth office on a daily basis. Is it okay if I sit? I feel okay. I just want to make sure. Ben is afraid that if I get up, I might walk everywhere. I'm very kind of an animated person at times. I want to just thank you all for having me here and having us here today. It is an honor to be able to come and share with you and share a little bit about the pool and this award, and really commend you and your staffs for an effort well done, quite frankly. I want to take a couple minutes. Ben asked me to kind of take a couple minutes and talk a little bit about the pool and who we are. Most of you probably have heard of us and know about it. You probably think of it in a way of, oh, they're the ones that won all the money every year, right? So there is a part of that where we're a part of your budget. But I also want to really talk about that from the standpoint of you're really paying yourself in a lot of ways. The basic tenet of the pool, we're organized under Ohio Revised Code Section 2744. We are a risk-sharing entity. You have joined together with now 14 other public transit agencies around the state of Ohio to self-insure your risk. So you're not just paying an insurance company to transfer that risk and the premium goes away. You pay the premium and then you never think about it again. You really are actively involved. Both Ben and Matt are, Ben is the primary board member and Matt is the alternate board member of the pool. They have an integral role to play in our governance, in how we set programs. They really do have to think about being a board member on what, for all intents and purposes, we're not insurance, but functions like an insurance company. So there are a lot of things that aren't normal to what they do every day in working here that they have to become versed on. And much like all of you, I'm certain, having been a little bit about my background as well, I've been on that side of the table. I've been a transit board member before. I've been an elected official before. I've worked at the pool for 19 years, and I was on the board of the pool before I worked for the pool. So I go far back as Frank. Frank and I actually served on the OTRP board together. That just makes me feel really old right now. You all are to be commended for what you do. And I would echo Frank's comments about you guys are doing a good job. I think the last, and I have the opportunity, I think I can come in here and I can say this without reservation that, I work with 15 transit authorities around the state of Ohio, not to mention we have relationships with transit authorities across the country. I actually serve as the vice chair of APTAS, the National Association's Risk Management Committee. So I'm exposed to transit operations across the country, and particularly from a risk management perspective. And I will tell you that you guys do an excellent job here. You do an excellent job through risk management, from safety standpoint. I'm involved in benchmarking studies, studying transit authorities and losses across the country. And our numbers here in Ohio, and specifically your contribution to those loss numbers around the state, hence this award today, they reflect very, very favorably against your peers across the country. And that doesn't happen by accident. It just doesn't. There are certain things that we can do. I often say this, I'm very good at my job. I am an excellent risk manager. I can make sure we never have another collision ever. I can stop it tomorrow. We just don't pull any buses out of the garage. Right? I mean, if that's where you're going to go, but that doesn't work. Obviously, there's inherent risk in everything we do. We balance that risk and we work through that to be able to provide for our communities. I get the opportunity to do a lot of training. I've done a lot of training with your operators. You've got a good culture here. You've got good operators. They pay attention. They get it for the most part. You can't say that as a blanket statement everywhere, because everywhere there's you know what I'm saying, right? But the operators here, every time I've been in front of them and trained them and interacted with them, they're excellent. They're top notch. They're professional. And as are most of your peers that are in this pool with you, all of your peers, I would say. So I guess the point I would make is that I'm proud to be associated with Laketran. I'm proud to be associated with the pool and with Ohio and all of those things. And it's an honor for me to come here and be a part of this. Part of what I do is we work to mitigate loss, to prevent loss, to make sure losses don't blow up. So we're doing things like training. We're doing things like we do an annual, what we call a risk management inventory with every member. Your staff has seen a lot of me. At least once a year, they see me for the better part of a day, where we sit down and go through very extensive inventory of what it is we're doing here. And what it does is it's a place where we all are forced to stop at least once a year and say, okay, how are we doing in these areas? And there are areas that involve Mike. There are areas that involve Keith. There are operational areas, there are maintenance areas, there Tony's involved because we have a whole section on IT and IC security, and that's only going to get bigger. I would like to give a shout out to Tony right now. Tony was an integral part of a training we're actually rolling out right now on cybersecurity that's going to be out and available for all of our members to use with their staffs and their drivers. And Tony served on a committee with that and was very helpful in helping us to do that. I honestly, I can't say enough. Anytime we need anything on a maintenance side, Keith has been incredibly responsive and takes what we're talking about seriously. I guess that's the case. You know, it's interesting. I get the opportunity, I walk in, but I don't have any authority to tell anybody to do anything, right? Everything I do is suggestions. So when you come in and people call you and look to you for that help and that resource, that makes a big difference. And you can be proud of your staff and the culture they've created here because they did that. So I want to first commend them for that. Are you gonna take this? Let me talk a little bit. Do I just use this thing? Is that what I do? Okay. I'm a baby boomer guy, so this will be interesting. So, oh, there we go. All right. So first off, we've developed this award. I'm going to slide through these. This award is strictly see, I can't click this and do it the same. It's strictly a function of each year we do as a part of our underwriting process, we collect the miles. You guys report your miles to us that you ran in that year. The year we're talking about here is the 2020 loss year, which was crazy for all of us, as we know, right? Because things were out of whack. We had the pandemic. We didn't know what we were doing. Miles went all over the place. So the fact that we all survived that, I think, is something we should pat ourselves on the back as well. But this award strictly it looks at the losses per miles that you operate, a very simple calculation. When we do this, we broke this up into 3 divisions, divisions 1, 2, and 3. You all are in division 1. You are our largest members. So you are compared against the other members that operate more than 3 million miles a year. So you guys are in the middle of that group. Division 2 obviously speaks for itself. Division 3, go ahead and click that. We'll move on. Okay, so how does it work? Click. The awards are tied to OTRP's fiscal years and loss years. They're made as of June 30th each year. So whatever is in your claim. So any claims, any losses that are in there, they are both. The calculation is what is reserved on the claim and what has been paid on that claim as of June 30th. They're all based, that's what I just said. So we'll just click on that. See, it doesn't work for me. So you guys are the Division 1 award winner. You had 79 cents per 100 miles. And that number is a really, really good number. I will not, it's not as good as the Division 1 award winner, which was Ashland, the city of Ashland Public Transit, which operates less than 10 buses and has less than 20 employees. They run less, I think they run about 300,000 miles a year, if that, but they had 0 losses. So that's what we all aspire to. But that's why we break the divisions up, because you can, it's a little bit different operation for you guys. So this gives you a little, this slide, quickly, I'll go through. These are the pool's calculations on that date. So last year, the losses, it's hard to see there, but that was $3.14. That was for that 2020 loss year, the losses across the pool. It was a very good year, which is good for you because that means more money's coming back. But the losses across the pool were $3.14 per 100 miles that were operated pool wide. The pool operates about 47 million miles now. So you guys are 4 million, Ben, help me. About 4 million of that 47 million miles for the coming loss year. We have about 1,900 vehicles total, and I think we are in the neighborhood of about 3,000 employees. So that gives you a size and scale. But over that, $3.14 was everybody collectively, you guys were 79 cents. So with that, I'm just gonna shut up. Take any questions. I'd like to, Bendy, I don't know if you want a picture, you want me to give this to you or? To whoever.
We'll take one today, but also, we're gonna put up a banner in the driver's room.
So this is a traveling award. As you can see, there's this name. Carter was also the recipient in 2017. So it travels around, so Ben's gonna have to give it back to me next year, unless you guys get it back. Where do you wanna do this? Just wanna do it? All right.
Oh, okay. I always feel awkward.
Me too.
Good. We'll get someone to drivers and get it posted.
Thank you all. I appreciate your listening to me. And with that, I'll go sit down and shut up.
Thank you very much.
Here, give it to Karen.
Thank you very much, Ken. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Lisa for the financial statements.
Somebody's got questions for Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did anyone have any questions for Ken?
Oh, yeah. Before I leave. Anybody?
Nope, I think you're good. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Okay, so this will be for the month of August. And again, this will be on your pages 18 and 19. I'm just summarizing. And really, there's not a whole lot to tell. We're kind of into the 8th month and everything's pretty much the same. The one thing that I'm going to add with our revenues, the 2020 actual column, I'm going to highlight the federal revenues, because if we look what we estimated, we were at $699,366. This year, we're at $6,804,038. And last year, we were at $7,439,909. The reason I'm highlighting this is I want to refresh everybody's memory that we got 3 grants for the COVID. One was the CARES Act, which we drew that down for operating in last year. We were able to get a little bit that we moved around, and we're using it for fuel this year, only about like 690,000. We should use up most of that this year. We did not use any of that was for fuel last year. The second grant was the CRISA grant. We just finally finished that up in August. There was about 16,000. So we've drawn that one down. I won't say we've drawn it all down. We've earned it. So we draw it down every quarter. So we'll be drawing that down, the balance of that. And we're starting on our third grant, which is the American Recovery Grant. That's like about a $9.9 million or $9.6 million grant. And so we started on that in August, and we've used about 652,000. So I'm projecting we won't be quite at half of it this year. And then the balance of that will be drawn down next year, just to kind of give because these are one-time grants. They're not going to be continuous. So we'll finish them up and use them. Sales tax, which is the other revenue source on here. I'm only highlighting that because we obviously had the new sales tax, which started. So when we compare it to 2020, it appears we have so much more, but it didn't start evenly. Like on January, we didn't get that until May of last year for the first time. It is a little bit higher again. In this particular estimate, though, at the time when I prepared these reports, I did not have the actual number, so I used our estimated. I did get it since then, and it's up about, I want to say 12% for the month, just for the month. So, and I'm going to do a little bit of detail on that. So when I do the budget, because it's been really high, like in double digits, we've never had that. I've been here since 2008, and we've never had double digits like we have for like these COVID months. So I don't want to arbitrarily just go and say, oh, we got all this money and increase it and then it not be. But I do a 10-year and a 5-year average, and I'll use those when I get ready to prepare the budget, and I'll highlight those. So currently for this year, we're at $24,870,772 million. And then if we go on to the expense side, for 2021, we're at $11,639,855. We had budgeted $14,760,127. Again, we didn't know how we would recover with the COVID. We are starting to come back. we're still a little bit less than what we were last year in expenses. So that being said, when we go on to the, to kind of look at the year-to-date total with the total revenues for 2021 and the total operating expenses, and then again, our total capital expense contribution, again, that's the same as it was because we only have through July. We didn't do anything really much with August. So I'll update next month for September. But our income before depreciation is at $10,406,988. And again, that's mainly contributed to those extra federal grants. And of course, sales tax plays a part of that too. So then we'll move on. Yes, go back.
I didn't go back and look, but I think we have about $1.8 million in estimated expenses or budgeted expenses on a monthly basis.
Yeah, yes,
And how, and we've been below that
we have.
for the whole year, but is it coming up or is it flat or? Maybe-
It's been about the same. I think part of it is we're trying to hire more people and we're trying to bring that up. But I mean, obviously that is probably the main reason why our expenses are down because of our employees and benefits. But I would say it's probably like for this month, we're at 637,000 just in wages and the 380,000 in benefits. And if I compare it to last year at the same time, we're still down compared to last year.
Okay.
But I know that we're trying to work our way back up to that. And again, this is August, so we're 2 months behind right now. So if you're asking me based on today in November, I would say, yes, we're probably a little bit higher than we were.
Okay.
Or than what we have been. I'm not going to say we're over where we were last year. It's been in and out. I don't know exactly, maybe Mike could speak to that more of, people retiring, quitting, because usually I think towards the end of the year, a lot of people, if they're going to retire, that's usually about when they do that. So you might see that come down and then go back up again in January. So I'm sure there's certain months that you'll see that a little bit more than others. But I would say we're pretty stagnant as of August, maybe increasing slightly as of November.
And we were deliberate for the first 8 months of the year to not hire. So we made a decision, unless we had like a great mechanic candidate or someone kind of like that come across our desk. But we deliberately didn't hire while we saw ridership low. So it drove, we tried to keep expenses as low as they could when you don't need them. So we left a lot of positions open. Now we're in the mode of trying to rehire them, but we're having a hard time filling them. So, we've been impacted by the great resignation, as they say, just like any organization. So we really started hiring again really in August. And now we're trying to kind of push even harder as we've lost more people than we've brought in. So the beginning of the year was an intentional, hey, we don't want to have these people because we didn't see the need. But now we're in a situation where we have a need again, but we're struggling to to hire them. So we actually have a hiring event tomorrow and the day after to try and recover. But our total number of drivers in 2021 is still below the number of drivers we had at 2020. So that's the biggest reason expenses are down. Like if you go back to the previous slide and look at specifically that expense line, you can see how much lower wages are than what we budgeted, especially because we didn't know what the pandemic was going to do. And then, we tried hard to, we don't want to spend the money if you don't need it. So that's been the main reason. We're kind of hoping to see it tick up a little bit, but we are struggling. Normally we could get a class of 10 people with some ease. Right now we're getting classes of 4. So we are still getting candidates. Our wages are still more competitive than a lot of places, but we are having a much harder time than we used to.
And then I want to just highlight one thing too on that. I think it was last year we started our new route 8 and 9, and that started in September. So with keeping or maintaining the same employees, then we might see a little bit of tick up when we go to look at September when we're comparing. Because even if you look at 21 and 20, we're down a little bit, but the 400,000 isn't like huge, that I think you'll see a tick up when we go to do the financials for September too.
Okay. Thanks.
So our cash balance, we had this is pretty much the operating, we keep that based on the, what the board approved for us to maintain for an operating balance. So that really won't change until next year when we evaluate the CAFR and what our expenses were. Capital, the 6,044,285, that really comes from our obligations from 2020, because capital obviously doesn't always get spent in the same year. So we have that, and for 2021, those are our commitments that we do have an obligation to pay. The headquarters building, it's an all encompass. I just set it aside based on what we have in our capital. That'll change after the new year when we do our capital and how we want to do it. And then STS obviously is our special transportation services. And that really hasn't changed that much. Other than the headquarters piece, as we get our cash balance, when we draw down those federal grants, I kind of make sure that we have the money we need for operating and capital, and the rest kind of gets put into the headquarters or capital, whatever it gets spent on piece. And then the next, so if is there any questions on the capital budget? There is a detailed capital list in your packet. If you have, that kind of details out all those projects, what's been paid and what hasn't been paid. So, or still has a balance to be paid. The next slide here I have is the special transportation services. In the middle, our actual revenue, our total revenue year to date is about 18,000. Our expenses are about 43, so we've spent a little bit less than budget, but we are starting to see some use with our special transportation services. Not so much the senior centers. I think they're starting to come back. So maybe like in November, December, I know we had a contract before that was on hold due to the COVID, and I think they're working on getting that signed. So the anticipation is that the senior centers are going to start using these services again. So. And then this is a little bit more detailed on that, on the capital projects. And again, 2021 is what we actually have what we have estimated based on what we've said throughout the year. But 22, 23, 24, and 25, those are estimates. But if there's a figure in there, we do have a grant that we have received, probably more than likely just for bus purposes for the future years. And I believe the 22 is kind of because the local pieces, the headquarters got moved just as an estimate. And it kind of gives you an idea over, it kind of gives you a 5-year outlook on your capital and what the federal, local, and state shares are. And that's really kind of stayed somewhat the same. And that's all that I have, unless I have any questions.
Seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve the August 2021 financial statements subject to audit? Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Spence. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you. And at this time, we will discuss the possible purchase of 18 dial-a-ride buses.
I'm here to ask the board for approval to purchase 18 replacement dial-a-ride buses, propane powered from Tesco. The FTA defines a useful life of a transit, light duty transit, medium-sized bus as 7 years or 200,000 miles. Our 2015s and 16s currently have over 200,000 miles. And this is even though they were rotated, I don't want to say out of the fleet, but they were mothballed to save expenses during COVID because they weren't needed. We saved on labor and used more efficient vehicles or cost efficient vehicles in their service. So they're already over the FTA's definition of a useful life. We entered into a 5-year contract with Tesco and starting in 2017 to buy buses. This was the start of the propane bus project. Diesel buses were no longer available. This will be the final year of that contract. Should be the final purchase of it. Going forward, it's common in transit to use the PPI, the price point index, to identify what future prices of buses will be. The PPI is really accelerated during COVID due to shutdowns, staffing issues, and naturally the chip shortage. So we're looking to purchase 2021 buses, 18 of them, estimated delivery second quarter, third quarter of 2023. There's a potential for it to be I would think a 2022 chassis, depending on delivery with a microchip and chassis shortage. This will bring our fleet of propane buses up to 60 buses and marking the end of the diesel bus in our dial ride fleet. It's a project we started in 2017. We will keep these buses in service until they're the 15s and 16s in service until the delivery. I expect them to get another 25, 30,000 miles on them. That's about our average. Our average pre-COVID was 35,000 miles a year. So we'll be up closer to 240, 250,000 miles on a 200,000 mile bus. So the purchase price of a propane cutaway is $148,339. On this purchase, we're adding in the radios for $2,378. Our current radios that are in the buses that are coming out of the fleet aren't supported by Motorola anymore. This was a way to roll it in with CMAQ and DIRG grants that are paying for 80% of the vehicles. I'll come back to the board in a month or two and talk about it, or next month, and talk about a radio purchase for the remainder of our vehicle or radios that aren't supported. So total cost with the bus and the radio in all 18 buses is $2,712,000, $712,906, with 80% of it covered under grants, either CMAQ or DIRG. They're 80% federally funded with a 20% local match.
What are DIRG funds?
The diesel,
Diesel emission
Emissions.
reduction grant.
it's funds that take diesels off the street. So, in conclusion, with Laketran has grant funding to cover 80% of the purchase price of 18 new propane powered dial ride vehicles to replace 18 diesel vehicles. So I recommend the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to exercise options for the purchase of these 18 replacement vehicles from Tesco. Yes,
Keith, what size buses are these?
these are 10 passengers, 10 passenger econo lines.
Now, these are not the full-size buses.
Yes, no, not transit buses. These are dial ride, full-size dial rides, as you're used to it.
They're the full-size dial rides, not the small van and not that mid-size bus.
Correct.
We're on the same page about that?
Yes,
Okay, I'm
Yep.
asking.
it's what you would consider our traditional dial ride bus.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this question is what I call the mid-size bus. I know you have another, what do you call them?
It's called a VT3.
Okay. Those buses are the most horrific things I've ever ridden in.
Oh.
They, at the wheel well, actually, where I need to sit, the wheel well butts up against the back wheel. I have been on those buses with other people in wheelchairs of various ages, and we all agree, we get off those buses and we feel like we've been beat up.
Oh.
I mean, I've literally come home in physical pain. There was an elderly gentleman in a power chair. And that poor man was on the bus when I got on. I was off first. He still had a ways to go. And he said to me, I can't wait to get home. I've
Okay.
been on this and I'm miserable.
Well, boy, do we have good news for you today. And that is, when we were at the Ohio Public Transit Association conference, the vendor that produces the suspension augmentation it's called More Ride. And it is it intercepts the traditional bus suspension and makes it, for lack of a better term, squishier. They did not offer that piece of technology on that size bus for a long time. They do offer it now. They actually sent us a test one for free, and it is on a bus today. And there is a test this week with a driver that is keenly aware of the problem to determine how well it solves the problem. So we know those buses need a little bit of suspension tune-up, and the vendor finally provides it. They gave us one for free. If it works out, we'll consider buying some for the rest of the fleet, but we're working on it. But we're not also to buy any, so
How many of those do we have now?
I think we have 16.
And their useful life, how old are they?
They are 2020s or 2019s,
21s,
21s. They're very new.
2130, yeah. 21s.
The ones we have,
We started getting those in 2017 was our first one.
and
So we
how-
have some,
10 of those?
excuse me? There's 16 total.
Okay. I hope that we will look at something else as we replace the rest of them.
The reason we purchased those is those are the smallest buses we can get with a side deploying wheelchair. So in our quest to shrink vehicles, that was purchased specifically for that reason, to try and make the dial-a-ride buses as small as possible with a wheelchair that still came out the side of the bus. So they have presented some challenges, just like everything does, but hopefully with this suspension adjustment, they will correct the ride and become a bus that people enjoy.
I'll give you some feedback on that.
We'll make sure you get to ride in the test bus,
Passengers will also.
but this purchase is not those, so.
I am very glad to hear that. Thank you for the update.
Any other questions for Keith? Seeing none. At this time, is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to purchase 18 propane dial-a-ride buses from Tesco at a cost not to exceed $2,712,906?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Zibble. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. And it looks like our next item will be to talk about electric bus charging infrastructure at headquarters. Looks like that's also you, Keith.
Yes.
Oh, it looks, I think we have it switched on this agenda here.
Sorry about that. That is my
No problem.
All right, good evening. So tonight I will be talking about installation of a fast charge bus charger at Laketran headquarters. So back in 2017, when Laketran made the decision to pursue battery electric buses, and we decided upon the charging model of on-route charging, we assessed our fixed route system for the best locations to install the infrastructure. And the sites that were identified were prioritized based upon the number of routes that go to the site, if we own the site, and other infrastructure already present. The priority number one site became the Frank J. Polivka Transit Center. Lakeland Community College is the site where a majority of Laketran's fixed route buses intersect. It also intersects with our campus loop and Commuter Express. Priority location number two became the Wickliffe Transit Center. Priority three is the Julie A. Cunningham Transfer Center in downtown Painesville. Route one is Laketran's historically most popular route, so that was a priority for us to be able to electrify Route one. With the implementation of Route 8 last year, Laketran headquarters moved up in priority. Being able to electrify our newest route was a big push, as well as all of the buses starting in their day here. There we go. For those of you that haven't had the opportunity yet to visit FJP or the Wickliffe Transit Centers, I wanted to show what the charging infrastructure looks like. The overhead fast chargers. They're 450 kilowatts each. They're made by ABB and they consist of 150 kilowatt charging cabinets. This is what electrifies the pantograph. And the pantograph is the red apparatus that drops down from the mast arm, connects with the rails on the top of the bus, and is actually charges the batteries on board. They come as a unit, and each charger is these for different pieces of equipment. For some history, back in February of 2020, Laketran issued a request for proposal for bus manufacturers to provide both battery electric buses, diesel buses, and bus chargers. We structured the procurement in this way so to make sure that the bus manufacturers provided the chargers, because the buses do not work without the chargers. And we hoped that this would help reduce any finger pointing between the bus manufacturer and the charger manufacturer. And I'm happy to report that that has been very successful for us. We've had a very smooth process of getting the chargers on site and commissioned. In May and June of 2020, the Laketran Board of Trustees passed 2 resolutions authorizing the purchase of 10 battery electric buses and chargers. A year later, our first battery electric bus was delivered, and then we could begin the process of commissioning the chargers. We started at FJP and then moved on to Wickliffe. The commissioning for the single charger at the Julia A. Cunningham Transfer Center began last week. And then in August, we were notified that we had a successful grant application to ODOT's OTP2 program to install a charger here at headquarters. So why is installing an opportunity charger at Laketran headquarters important? First off, all the buses begin and end their day here. So a bus could charge at headquarters before deadheading to the start of their route, or they could charge at headquarters at the end of the day before parking in the garage. Battery electric buses that need to undergo maintenance can also fast charge here at headquarters without needing to be driven to a different location or taking several hours to charge using our slow charger in the garage. A charger here at headquarters allows us to electrify Route 8, which I believe was a key reason that this grant was awarded to Laketran, because being able to implement a new route and then very quickly electrify it, I believe was a compelling reason to award the grant. And then also training. Any new fixed route driver has to be trained on how to use battery electric buses and use the charging infrastructure. So having a charger here at headquarters will make the training process a lot easier. So this is what I thought was a good picture of what the project will look like. The yellow is new concrete for expanding the driveway. If you can see there, it kind of says bus charging pedestal. That's the designer lingo for bus charger, the mast arm. The red outline is the bus. We did not want to have a bus charging, for 8 to 12 minutes, blocking traffic coming in and out of the facility. So by expanding the driveway, the bus can charge and traffic can move in 2 directions. Also with this project, there's an installation of a fence to both prevent and protect riders from accessing the pond. There's an improved passenger waiting area and new shelters. The charging cabinets are actually being installed across the driveway by the trees. So there'll be new pad mounts and transformers and the 3 charging cabinets installed across the driveway. We'll also improve pedestrian access from anyone accessing this area from the overflow lot. I walk there pretty much every day just to kind of get some steps in, and it's not clearly marked to get pedestrians from the overflow lot to where they would actually get the bus. So we'll improve that with this project as well. And then also commissioning of the charger. So construction costs and grant funds. There's a 9% contingency associated with this project for any unforeseen site conditions and any other issues that might arise. And then also paying New Flyer Infrastructure Solutions to help commission the charger. They send 1 or 2 staff here to Laketran and commission each charger with a bus. And, they're here as long as it takes. Last week, we started commissioning at the transfer center in Painesville. They were there 5 days a week, and it went well, but we're not there yet. So they'll be back this week to continue that process. Our grant that we received from ODOT, the Ohio Transit Partnership Program grant, although the money comes from ODOT, it's actually their allocation from FTA, so it is federal dollars. So we have a 20% local match with this grant. But the entire project is covered with grant funds. So in conclusion, installation of a fast charger at Laketran headquarters is essential to our electric bus program. We have full funding from our grant from the Ohio Transit Partnership Program. Therefore, we recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution authorizing the CEO or his designate to enter into and execute an agreement with New Flyer for installation of a battery electric bus charging infrastructure at a cost not to exceed $675,000. Are there any questions? Yes.
We learn anything on the other installations that it's being applied to this one?
I mean, I can only hope so. My impression is each of these chargers is kind of made to order. So things that they've, installed and programmed that worked well at one site, they did it the same way at the Painesville Transfer Center, and now we have a different problem. So it's just, it's a very high-tech piece of equipment with a lot of moving parts. And so I think each one is its own learning curve.
And the easiest answer is the hardware is very well engineered and planned down to the millimeter. So installation has been the same everywhere. Once the package got developed, it's been very rigid. The challenges have been in software. The buses communicate with Wi-Fi to the charger. And so, at the FJP at the college, the aluminum flashing on the roof had sort of a weird interaction with it, and it kind of bounced. And so a lot of it is just tweaking to the site, but the actual construction of the equipment really has been pretty standard.
Okay.
Any other questions? At this time, is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into and execute an agreement with New Flyer of America for the installation of battery electric bus charging infrastructure at Laketran headquarters at a cost not to exceed $675,000?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Zibble. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McNamee. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And at this time, I'm now going to turn the meeting over to Ben for an unscheduled action item.
So I hope everyone received my email from Friday. I have a late edition for the board to consider. I want to make sure everyone understands that this is not something we have to do overall, but if we want to move forward with a van pool program in the near future, that we will have to take some action a little earlier than I had planned. So Ford Transit vans, they're called Ford Transit vans. That's the model of the van. They are essentially the only more than 7-passenger van on the market today. There's lots of minivans that exist out there that have a smaller passenger capacity, but these are the only vans that have a larger capacity than that. They're also the only ones, they do meet Buy America. And so we were notified Friday by our bus vendor, who we also have a contract with to purchase these vans. He said, you have to have your orders in by Friday of this week. I think that's the 29th. With a PO if you want any vans in 2022. So I said, oh my goodness, let me at least let our board know about this, because if we want to do a van pool program, we'll need to buy vans. These are very difficult vehicles to come by overall. There's not any on the used market because Ford has been having manufacturing challenges since the beginning of COVID. So these are hard to find. I'm very uncomfortable, bringing something to the board that you haven't seen in advance. I don't like sort of surprise, here's an action item. But these are the right vehicles to operate a van pool. You want a van that has a capacity of around 10. The FTA says the vehicle has to have a capacity of 7 to be qualified to be used as a van pool. So while a Honda Odyssey might seat 7, if you think about 7 adults riding in a minivan every day, it's not a very comfortable proposition. So when we said, what kind of vehicles do we want to buy? And we were talking about asking for approval in the first quarter of next year, these were the vans. These are essentially the only van that we could buy that fit kind of all the criteria. So with that in mind, when our vendor said, hey, if you want vans, you need to buy them now, I said, well, I'm not comfortable with this, but I'll bring it to the board and we can talk about it, because I know we haven't kind of done all the due diligence on van pool yet. We still have more to go. I have been surprised at the amount of enthusiasm that has existed in the community for the program, both from the business sector and from the government sector. Commissioner Hammercheck actually called me today to talk about how important he felt this project was for Lake County and the region. To quote him, he said, we need to be the tip of the spear, not get the shaft. So it's kind of become a little bit high profile in the community, which has sort of been interesting. As I sat there in my office on Friday thinking, should I really bring this to the board and should we really talk about this? I thought about the timeline. So if we approve vans today, they would most likely show up on our property in 8 to 10 months. So we wouldn't see them until probably third quarter of next year. If the board remembers, in February or in January, you approved the purchase of a Ford Transit Connect, which is a smaller version of the van for a replacement vehicle that was in an accident. We ordered it right after that. We still don't have it. So buying vans today equates to a van pool program in the second half of next year. If we wait, buying vans in 2022, from what I understand, they're going to open the order bank again in October of 2022, which means we would expect to see vans delivered in the third quarter of 2023. So we would have to wait a very long time to get vans. Now, it's possible the used vehicle market could loosen up. We may be able to find them somewhere. But as we've talked to some of the folks we've been talking to in the van pool world, they haven't been able to find used vans either. So there's just a shortage of these vehicles. So I think that while we haven't finished all of our due diligence about van pool, the sense I've gotten from talking to board members individually, from the community, from the commissioners, is that there is an appetite to provide van pool services. So I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to take this to the board and talk about buying vans, we haven't finished a program, as if I was a board member, what would I say? I would say, well, that might be a little risky. I'm not sure I want to be involved in that. So we, as staff, sat down and said, okay, if we did this, are these vans just sort of quote wasted? If say we decided we want to buy the vans today, and then when we saw more about van pool, we're like, I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. These vans would not be wasted. They could be used as non-accessible vehicles in the fleet. We have 2 of them today. So it's not that we would have vans we wouldn't know anything to do with. We would have to restructure our sort of vehicle procurement processes later to sort of include these as dial-a-ride buses versus the traditional dial-a-ride replacement program. So there is a backup plan. Now, it's not my favorite backup plan. A non-accessible vehicle, to me, it's better off as a minivan, because if you're a senior or a person with disabilities, it's easier to get in a minivan than it is a 15-passenger van. But for van pool, you need the space in the 15-passenger van. So we do have a backstop if we bought vans today and then decided we didn't want to do a program. But it's not perfect, but we also didn't want to have the risk of just buying a van and then maybe we don't do van pool and we have these vans sort of sitting around. We didn't want that to be the case. So we're in a little bit of an awkward situation. And at the end of the day, when I really sat down and talked with my team and we thought about it, we said, you know, there's a lot of demand for van pool. I've had mostly positive reactions from board members individually. I think it's worth putting this on the agenda and talking about it, and maybe taking a leap and ordering vans now, knowing that it's going to take them 8 to 10 months to arrive. We will have a program flushed out by the time they get here. And it's not like we have to create a program from scratch. We have a lot of examples from the West Coast. So it's not like we're like, how do we do this? We need to do it with some Laketran flair, but the fundamentals of how you operate a van pool exist. We know how they exist. We know how to do it. It's a matter of putting all those pieces together. I also kind of joked. I said, you know, sometimes I think I've moved a little too fast. This is the one time that I feel like I was trying to deliberately go slow. And here I get an email that says, hey, buy vans or else. So this is sort of an interesting one. We were working towards getting grant money to fund the project. So we do have grant funds to buy the vans. We have about $114,000 of grant money. So the local share is only 165,000. So we were working towards this. I don't love the prices right now either. The contract we have, the price we bought vans last was $44,600. And that is sort of shocking when you think about a van. How the heck is that van so expensive? You know, it's not like a Yukon Denali, you know, it's a van. They told us the PPI increase is going to be roughly 25%. One of the other really obnoxious things about this particular proposal is that they told us prepare for that increase, but you don't get an actual price until you committed to buy the van. So you have to send them a PO Friday, and then they will tell you what the exact price is next Friday. So we sort of put all that together and said, how much, you know, I asked the bus vendor, how much should a van cost? How much should I prepare for? He said, they'll be less than 60,000. So I said, okay, we'll put that together as the number. 60,000 to me is still an absurd price for a van. You know, I have like a diesel pickup truck that costs, you know, similar price, but it's a pickup truck that has some options. It's not a white box. But it sort of also is what it is nowadays. So while I'm not super enthusiastic about the way this has been presented to us, as I imagine you're sitting here thinking the same thing, if we want to start a van pool within the next 18 months, it would be best for us to sort of take a leap of faith and buy these vans now so that we can have them and operate a van pool sometime next year. They haven't given us a specific delivery deadline of when they'll be available, but based on our experience, I would say it's probably in that 8 to 10 months range. So I know this is a little odd, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but I think as we think about van pool, we unfortunately have to make this decision a little earlier than I had planned. And we obviously will continue to give the board more information as we finish up the fare structure, talk about the expenses and kind of get everything lined up. So I know this is odd, but yeah, here it is. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
This is 8 vehicles?
Yeah, so when we think of how many should we order, we think about it in rows in the garage. So if we kept them and ran them in dial-a-ride service, 8 is the number you need to have an efficiently organized garage. So we'd have 1 row of vans. That's how we came up with the number 8. I think the demand for van pool is probably greater than that, but I was uncomfortable bringing anything more than that to the board.
And you're talking about a pilot program still?
I believe it would be a pilot, yes.
For how long?
Usually you run a pilot program for a minimum of 3 years.
Do you have the cost data on running the pilot? The cost of the bus?
We have some of it. The idea is that the operating expenses of the van pool would be offset by the revenue coming in from the van pool. So in theory, it would be close to a wash, but we have not finished. That was my next step, was to bring that to the board, to talk about it, to include it in next year's budget as a pilot program. We were planning to bring that to you next month. So this is not in the order we had planned. It's play your cards as you're dealt situation.
You said something about canceling the order?
I don't think we could cancel the order. I think once we give them the purchase order, the vans are ordered. It's possible that if we place the order now and decide we don't want them, there may be some opportunity for me to call the bus vendor later and say, hey, look, we're not interested in these. My thought is the market for these is relatively hot. So I would think that they would say, sure, we'll take them and not invoice you for them. They won't commit to that in advance because they don't know today if they'll have a buyer when the buses are available, but it's possible. I don't know if I would count on it, but it is in theory possible.
This isn't be a deal situation or the way to approach it at all, but what's going through my mind is if you get more data on the cost of the program itself, and it's something the board doesn't like, wondering if there was an out down the road before we actually started it.
From what I understand, the process is we submit the order to Ford and Ford says, thank you for the order. And it's kind of like paying for something on Amazon in advance. But you can't really return it. So I can't guarantee that the vendor would take it back. There is some, in theory, possibility for us to sell them ourselves if we bought them and we didn't want to operate them. That's a little risky to me. I'd be nervous to kind of bank on that. I mean, it's possible, but.
Then just a quick question to add on to this. You mentioned about the non-ADA required vans. Have you put any thought into how many vans you would like to see in that fleet?
We are working through the test process to say what the right number is. We have successfully tested 4 in the fleet to say that we can run 4 without a problem. We really expect 8 to be very doable. I'm looking at Matt. Matt has a little bit of laryngitis, so I'm not sure if he can answer, but I think 8 is a safe number for that.
We're currently testing 6.
Okay.
We just moved it up to 6.
Have we had any problems with 6 so far?
Just staffing issues currently.
Okay. So
It's not quite the question I think I was asking. I mean, ultimately, though, would you be looking at 8 or more of those non-ADA buses?
my hope is to me, 8 is kind of the minimum, because to keep that garage organization in check, you really want to be able to order 8. So we want to get that pilot test program to 8 and be comfortable. And that's when, if we get to 8, that's when I was planning to come back to the board and say, hey, we're ready to test out some non-accessible vehicle, or not ready. We've tested out some non-accessible vehicles, ready to make a purchase. We had planned that in probably April of next year, because we want to push the envelope on the non-accessible vehicles as far as we can kind of get to the breaking point where, hey, if maybe we got to 12 and that doesn't work, I'd like to be able to say where that end is.
I interrupted Donna, so.
No, that's okay. I was under the impression that the non-ADA vehicles would be either a minivan or a sedan to make them easier for older passengers to access.
A minivan, I think, is the ideal vehicle.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't think that these would be the ideal vehicle for that program, but I guess my point was they could be used as a backup if we needed to. So it's not like if we didn't do van pooling, these would sit and not get used. These could be good for our contracted service with Medicaid and DD because those aren't necessarily quote public services. So we can treat those a little different. And that's how we use the 2 vans in the fleet today. Sure, Danny.
So I know that you said that there's a lot of interest coming from other people and outside sources, but what's the interest inside Laketran with you, your employees? Is this another task that needs to be, heaped on them and you don't have enough staff? Is it just something that they see, oh, this is another task we have to do and figure this out, but we have no more help and we're still, trying to hire people? And I mean, what's the feel and the sense inside of Laketran?
So we've had a couple different thoughts. I think most of us, and my team can answer if they disagree with me, is that we are sort of excited about the possibility of fulfilling needs that exist right now that we don't meet, especially after hours. There is some concern about, the extra workload that would exist. My initial thought process when we started exploring this was to say we would start it and let it kind of organically move. And then maybe once it got some mass, we would say, let's potentially hire a person to manage it. That was before it had a little bit of a lower profile, when the community wasn't, when the AWT board wasn't calling me asking for presentations. And before Commissioner Hammercheck was not down at NOACA, pushing this to the NOACA board. So I've sort of started to have the consideration that maybe part of making it successful would be to hire a person up front to really drive the program. That would be a partial marketing person, partial operations person. I haven't completely decided if that's the right way to go or not yet. We've been having a lot of internal discussion about how we would do that. It's kind of a chicken or egg situation. Do you wait until you have a successful program, or do we try and drive the program success with some extra resources? So I don't have an answer at that yet now. Around the industry, it's roughly 20 vans per back-end employee. So our initial thought was if we could get 20 vans, then it might justify having a person. But people are expensive, so we're always very nervous and sort of cautious when we talk about adding, especially non-revenue generating overhead. So that's kind of where we're at, I think, as a whole. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in with any opinions other than that.
I mean, I'm not the one operating the bus, but I think any way that Laketran can, provide more service to the region is something that we need to be doing and makes me excited. So having NOACA and our county commissioners also excited about a potential program makes me excited.
So that's kind of it for my spiel, if you will. I'd love to hear, what everyone here is thinking, because in a way, if we vote yes tonight, that does sort of mean, yes, we want van pooling. If we vote no, it doesn't mean we don't want van pooling, but it means we're probably going to be waiting 18 months. Unless we could find a vehicle on the used market. I think that's probably challenging. I don't want to say it's impossible.
Can you go back to the funding page?
Sure.
Just like the breakdown. Thanks.
And just to make sure that I understand this, what you're asking the board to do is to approve a purchase order to be cut for 8 transit buses for a program that hasn't been defined, for a service that doesn't exist. And that it has to be done now because there's a deadline in terms of the capacity of the market. So you're asking the board to take a risk that the capacity won't be there next year, or that the need, the demand is not going to be worth, the cost. And if the demand is not worth the cost, and we don't understand what the demand is going to be, you said you've gotten, people from AWT, and again, it goes to the last meeting. Of course, people want a lot of things if they don't have to pay for it.
Sure.
So if you're offering to pay for something that people don't want to pay for, there's no risk that they're taking. So unless they've put something in writing to you, I question the demand. Did Mr. Hammercheck put something in writing to you about this?
I can read a text message.
Okay, why don't you do that?
He called me this morning, and I said, I'm not available. So then he actually texted me during the meeting, and I said, I can follow up with you to talk about van pooling tomorrow. He said, tomorrow is fine. I just wanted to confirm that you have my full support on this project and that this is transformational in nature, what we're doing. I said, thank you. I appreciate that. He said, we can definitely keep Lake County at the tip of the spear rather than just getting the shaft. I said, LOL. And then he said, in government, if we don't laugh every once in a while, we could probably cry.
So what does he think the program is, and who does he think has an interest in it, and how much demand does he think that there is actually for this program?
He hasn't said specifically to me how much demand he perceives there to be. He mentioned that he had conversations around Lake County with businesses that are interested in this type of project. At Hvac, when Hvac was presenting their regional van pool, which I sent some emails to the board about, he made it clear that he thought Laketran should run sort of he referred it to as a franchise setup in Lake County or something that was somewhat separate from what Hvac did. I think when we talk about the demand, the place we've heard the most finite information is from just-in-time staffing about the program they run and their desire to get out of that business. Matt, do you know how many vans they have that they were trying to?
I do not currently know.
We've been talking with them about how many vans they have that they'd like to move to us. And really the question isn't how many vans do they want to move to us? It's how many vans are they not serving today? How many vans can they not provide service with that they'd like to? And they haven't given us the number on that yet. So that's part of why this all makes me a little nervous, because of all the points you mentioned. We are sort of putting the cart before the horse in maybe a very literal way, since but I wanted to have more information to you before I asked to buy vehicles. I wanted to have a more defined program. And so I don't have answers to some of your questions. And I certainly understand why you have those questions.
Yeah, I think having participated in a van pool program before when I lived out on the West Coast, there was never any Ford vans involved in any of that.
Sure.
So that's a first red flag that I hear. Of course, times have changed, and that was, more than a few years ago. But to think that there's only one model of van in the entire world and it has to be ordered on this Friday from a risk arbitrage standpoint. We're taking one risk after another risk, and you got a backup plan, and you described with that backup plan, it wouldn't really meet the any ADA requirements. And so it would be something else altogether that would have to be fine-tuned. It just seems like there's so many unknowns and there are so many risks that I'm not sure who's going to be held accountable if this doesn't work.
By the end of the day, that would be me.
Yeah. And really, wouldn't that be the people that voted to approve it? That you asked to approve it?
Potentially.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
pretty sure you could point the finger right back at me.
I'm sure we will figure out a way, but I would just worry, this is, just a roll, this is, what they call just a rolling risk upon risk upon risk upon risk. And with no hard data, and no plan. So we're going to approve, and we've done it before, so, and I don't like it every time, but we're going to approve $500,000 for something that there's no real even plan written out. A couple guys said a couple things at a meeting, and one guy put out a text. And, you know, I mean, and that's it. That's all I know of. So for that reason, I would be really, you know, against it, unless I misunderstand.
That is where we're at. And I completely understand your concern, and believe me, that was one of the things I thought about when I brought this today. I will answer the vehicle question. There really isn't another vehicle nowadays that has that capacity. The Chevy got out of the business in 2016. Dodge makes one that doesn't have seats. The only vehicle that is more than 7 seats is this Ford Transit van. I can't answer the reason why that is. There are lots of minivans that exist. Comically, the only one that beats Buy America is a Honda. Yeah, so from a vehicle's perspective, this is the only one. Now, like I said, you could operate a van pool with a smaller vehicle, but it gets challenging with fitting enough folks inside. For the other questions, I wish I had a plan. My plan was to bring you a plan.
Totally understand. I think you've done a good job explaining it. I just wanted to make and then I replayed it to you in the way that I heard it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And what dictates the number of people that you're estimating need to ride in the van pool?
So to qualify as a van pool under the federal guidance, the vehicle has to be able to accommodate 7 people.
Okay.
The target we have sort of set for people in the van is between 5 and 10. So you could operate it with a smaller vehicle. It is legal as long as it seats 7. The economy of scale for the individuals gets better the more of them there are. So the general information we've gotten is you want a vehicle that can seat 10 ideally, so that they can kind of get their friends to ride and lower the cost for everybody. So having a slightly larger capacity is what we've understand desirable and what is operated by all the existing transit systems.
Okay. And then regardless of how we vote, when would you expect that a plan would actually be available for us to review?
Our sort of draft schedule was to have a very high level budget next month with a lot more details kind of coming slowly so that you could have time to absorb it, with the idea that we would to talk about really starting a program in the first quarter of next year. So I had hoped to have sort of a decision whether we really wanted to move forward with van pool by February or March.
And is Tesco the only person we can actually purchase these vans through?
No, we can purchase them from anybody. We did a procurement with Tesco for 3 types of vans, which included this style. So we have an existing contract and procurement completed for vans with Tesco. So if we wanted to use grant money and order them now, this would be our only option because we wouldn't have gotten the procurement completed in advance. If we wanted to use all local money, we could buy them from anybody today with board authorization.
Let's say we wanted to buy them from somebody else 6 months from now.
Then we could go through a procurement process, and as long as we have, it takes about 90 days to go from start to end on a procurement process. So we could go out to bid for them from someone else.
Okay, thank you.
And you need to renew that contract anyway, or get a new supplier
is-
next year.
That's
a separate contract.
That was a separate contract.
We have 2 contracts to purchase vehicles. We have one for buses and one for vans.
Okay.
The van one was initially let in 2019, so it doesn't expire till 24.
Okay, thanks.
Just say a quick comment. On AWT's end, being vice president, I've been kind of involved on a lot of the conversations with this, even after Ben's presentation. There is a lot of excitement around it, but to the point of it's kind of no risk to our members if it's not costing anything. But there was some concerns from some of our members as far as like the whole liability and basically getting anyone to really kind of commit without some kind of solid plan and all of what the details look like as far as the liability, the insurance, the cost, the training, because, certain drivers need to be, whether there's training involved. There was just a lot of questions. So, it's hard to say which way a lot of our members would go until we have all of those answers. Upfront, though, they think that it could help, kind of bridge a gap with some of our workforce needs, at least in the manufacturing end. There's definitely potential there, but a lot of questions would have to be answered before we could really get solid commitment from members. But there is a lot of excitement around the program.
And we do have, I haven't really gotten all of it into the right information yet for everybody. We do have answers to some of those questions. The one thing we talked about in the past that was my largest concern is about how the insurance would work. So we do have answers on that. The answer is that they would, the drivers and the vans would be insured via us in OTRIP. So they can be a member of OTRIP. They have to be made a Laketran employee. They would not get paid any hours by Laketran, but they get listed on the rolls as an employee to be able to cover them with insurance. So if something happened, ultimately it would be covered through OTRIP. I had a lot of conversations with OTRIP about, is that acceptable legal wise? Is that how they like it to happen? That is the industry standard for how van pool drivers are covered by transit agencies with risk pools. So it's being done other places in the country. Going along with that, my next concern was about workers' comp. If we have them on our roles as an employee, is there a workers' comp risk? That's something that we really couldn't find out from another state because every state's workers' comp laws are different. The general consensus is that there is some risk for workers' comp because the person would be operating a vehicle where the people are paying to ride it. And that was the ultimate sort of factor that was involved. So there is some workers' comp risk. Where it starts and ends is a little fuzzy, and there isn't a great definition of it because this type of thing hasn't been tested in the courts exactly. So that is probably the biggest risk that exists. Training would take place. We would have the drivers trained by us. And our training department has talked about what that would look like because obviously we can't put them through a 6-week training program like a dial-a-ride driver. So we have a lot of those answers kind of worked out. We've had a lot of conversations internally. So we sort of have the framework together. It's not in a format that we've made ready to present to the board. But we have been moving down that line. The biggest question we've gotten from people in the community is, what is the program? And one of the challenges of van pool itself is just defining the dang thing. And so we are getting things ready and having things put together. They weren't ready for this presentation. But I hope to have all of them kind of wrapped up in that January, February range for the board to see at the February or the March meeting as a whole. This is the program that we would consider rolling out. So that's been our biggest question from folks we've talked to is, well, how much is it? That's the main question. How much is it and how does it work? And so those are things we're close, but aren't done yet.
Was Just in Time gonna give you, or not give you, but were you gonna be able to get any vans from them?
Yeah, we've talked to them about that, about how many could we buy from them. They haven't given us an answer yet. They have sort of said, we will probably sell you some, but not all of them, because we have demand outside of our existing network that we can't get vans for, so we don't sell you everything. So they could potentially sell us some. They have not said how many.
How many are they operating in Lake County?
Matt, do you know how many they're operating in Lake County?
I believe that there are currently 9.
Sorry.
He said he believes there are currently 9.
9.
And they told us in meetings that they have demand beyond what they currently have. And that one of the reasons they have they don't have perfect numbers on it is because they didn't think it was an option that existed in the world. So they weren't preparing to say, let's get a van together. We've asked them for that information, but they don't have it today.
Back to the driver question. Are these drivers also going to be drug tested and so on?
Yeah.
Anything our drivers
if they're gonna drive vehicles we own, yes, they would be included in the random testing pool or a separate random testing pool specifically for van drivers. But yes, they,
So everything would apply except for they're not being paid.
essentially, yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Ben? So I think at this time, we will see if there's any interest in entertaining it. Do you mind advancing to the last slide where the resolution language was? At this time, is there a motion to approve the attached resolution authorizing the purchase of 8 vans from Tesco at a cost not to exceed $480,000? Does not appear there is a motion for that, so we will move on with our agenda.
Cool.
Ben, I'll turn the meeting over to you for the 6-month look ahead.
Certainly. So the 6-month look ahead, I'll be brief. We have the budget next month. We have propane fuel contract. We have a 2-way radio replacement purchase. This is another interesting one that has some time associated with it. So we have 2-way radios in the fleet. Every bus has one. We have some handheld ones also. We've had them for a long time. They were purchased, I think, in 2009, if I remember right. We have been slowly replacing them when we replace vehicles because they are kind of expensive. Right now, if a radio breaks, we can send it to Motorola and they will fix it and they will send it back. As of December this year, that is no longer an option. If they break, they just can't be repaired. So we are faced with a situation where we need to replace the radios. Motorola is offering a $400 discount per radio if we order them before December 10th. So we have sort of included them in purchases here and there. We don't need to buy a whole fleet of radios, but we will bring an item to the board in November to purchase sort of the remaining radios left a little bit early, but with a discount that we thought is worth the investment. In December, we will ask to approve the operating and capital budgets of the schedule. We don't have any items. Oh, I put no items on January. That is not right. We have a bus sign replacement scheduled for January. When we buy our bus sign hardware, we've bought it in small pieces over time. We are running out again, so this is another relatively routine item. We haven't figured out exactly how many we want to buy yet, but it'll probably be based on how much available funding we have from grants. That is just mostly to slowly replace the bus signs around Lake County. About 20 to 40 of them get destroyed every year. Seems like a lot, but they get beat up out there. So that's just keep them in good working order. For February, we have another routine item, which is a HVAC maintenance contract. We go through this process every 3 to 5 years to hire a maintenance vendor to do our HVAC maintenance. We also have the same thing for plumbing in February. And then in March, we have the same thing again for electrical. The only difference with electrical is it will include the preventative maintenance and repairs and things for the electric bus chargers. So relatively routine items coming up before us, but the electric one will have a little bit extra to it for the charger maintenance. Care if I just roll on into CEO? So CEO report, basically, we've had a lot of progress on the electric bus program. The charger in Painesville was started commissioning on the 18th. Things have gone relatively well. A couple little hiccups here and there, but nothing major. It did successfully charge a bus and validated that it worked. I think there were a couple little parts, little odds and ends on order to get it fully operational. Operational. For Geauga Transit, ODOT has informed us they have received our suggestions for their study. They've not given us a timeline yet, but they said that they will include those suggestions in their quote boilerplate transit merger study. So Lord knows what that is at ODOT, but we will hear more from them as they work through it. Van pooling. This is what I had preferred to talk about. So we are working on our fare models and estimate and cost estimates. We have drafts of the fare structure and operating guidelines that we're going to send to the board soon. We were also planning on getting a list of startup costs that would involve the purchase of just-in-time staffing's fleet and some buses of our own, or vans of our own. As I mentioned, most of the insurance is complete, so I won't go over that again. I think the board has all seen my email about NOACA's entrance into van pooling that just makes things all that more interesting. And then non-accessible vehicle testing. We've been testing those. Matt just moved that up to 6. So we have had 6 non-accessible vehicles testing in our fleet. And just a reminder, what that means is it's a bus that is accessible, but in the computer system, it's designated as non-accessible, just to validate that it can work. Like I mentioned earlier, we want to purchase between 8 or 9 of them to fit in one row. So our goal is to get to that 8. 8 is that magic number to be able to buy some non-accessible vehicles. And the objective here would really to replace dial-a-ride buses with non-accessible vehicles. So instead of buying, the next time we do a dial-a-ride replacement program, we might be buying, 8 buses and 8 something smallers, with the objective to slowly transition over to a portion of the fleet that is non-accessible, that is more cost efficient, that is easier to hire for, that requires less training. And so the harder we can push in that envelope is the plan, to the point of, we don't want to break our service, but we want to slowly push the limits and see how many we can operate, with the minimum objective being 8. Again, we have been testing that. We're taking it slow. We're being very cautious because we don't want to negatively impact any customers. So our plan is to have sort of that stress testing complete in the April or May of 2022 to be able to say, when we do our traditional bus orders in October, to be able to say, hey, here's how many non-accessible vehicles we think we should buy instead of dial-a-ride buses. So we're making good progress on that. And those were all my normally scheduled updates versus this van one that got thrown in the mix short term. So that is the end of my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Is there a director's report?
I did not have one this month. Great. I guess I should say, does anyone have any questions for any of the directors on their reports? I was trying to get us a nice short meeting.
Is there any old business in the room? Any new business? At this time, is there a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Epic. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Dibble.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned at 5:37 today.
You should text Brian.